or at the curb. So basically they'd be going up and down the street. And the nuance there is that it really takes different types of equipment to collect in the alley versus in the street. So as you can imagine, in the alley, it's pretty narrow between garages. It's usually about between 14 and 16 feet. And so the driver actually has to take the cart, usually that's off to the side by the garage, wheel it to the back, then the lift lifts it up from the back of the truck, and then empties it, and then the driver moves it back into place. Whereas on the street, typically they have a sidearm. It comes out, picks up the container, dumps it on the side, and then returns it. And there's less need for the driver to get out in most instances. Just because the street is wider, there's usually more room there. But it is two different types of vehicles that service those facilities. So Company B said, yep, we can do that for both garbage and recycling. Company A said, no, if somebody's getting it right now, we'll continue to provide that service, but we would like to provide service only at the curbside. So the intent would be is you would not get that choice, but instead that you would have to do what you're currently doing. So if for some reason, you don't have alley service right now, because we know that a couple of companies have opted out of that over the last several years, forced people to go to curbside, you would not be allowed to make that choice to go to alley. For large item disposal, which again was, yeah, Chris.
Did you get confirmation on whether that was, like, what if that Company A got the contract, but you had alley service from a different provider? Did you get clarification on that?
I did not, yeah. So I'm being most conservative that we'll have to figure that out if we move forward.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Did you go to the name of the company, tell us what it's going to say?
Yeah, I prefer not to. We want to keep this as fair as possible. So really, we want to do it based on the pros and cons of what is laid out, and not have the company name necessarily influence that decision. So for large item disposal, which you remember is 2 vouchers per year, up to 3 furniture items, large items, mattresses and such, appliances, plus 10 bags of trash, plus 10 bags of yard waste. Company A said, yeah, totally can do that. Company B said, no, instead what they're proposing is that you have to take those items in your vehicle and bring them to a central site. So that might be a park, maybe the service center, if you know where that's located. And the downside there is finding the vehicle. And for me, I'm single, I don't have a pickup truck. How would I get a mattress to the service center, let's say? So you have to work with people, usually your neighbors. Arvada is recently doing this, and they found a lot of people who are willing to help each other, but it is more of a detriment or a difficulty in just throwing it out on the curb and then at least getting it out to the curb so that it can be picked up. So then finally the opt-out considerations. So again, we said, we'll make everybody do it for 1 year, see how it goes, but then we want to allow people to opt out in the future after that first year. Again, Company A said, great, we can do that, but if it's more than 10%, we want to reserve the right to renegotiate. Because again, it causes the efficiencies to go down and makes it more costly for them, even though they're driving just as many miles and providing just as much staffing for this program. Company B said that they basically households could not opt out, meaning you could, the city would allow you to, but they would still require the city to pay at a minimum service level, whatever their least costly service was. Yes, sir.
Do you know from these 2 companies how many people they service as of today?
Yeah, we don't know exact numbers. We did in the 2019 survey, we're asking that through this survey, so we'll be able to judge that more closely. I believe back in 2019, we had a couple more companies back then. So American Disposal and Leeds was available back then. But I want to say between the 2, Republican Waste Management, just thinking off the top of my head, we're probably around 40 to 50% of the whole city back then.
I just wonder with that 10%, if they're only doing 10% now, and they lose 10%, it's really not numbers to numbers.
I see, yeah. Mhm. Yeah, Marcy?
So 10% off now, that would probably mean that rates would go up.
Most likely, yeah. They would,
That would be a contract.
correct. So they're making that caveat that if we move forward, we would have to negotiate those rates.
And would that be the city negotiation?
Yes.
And then for company B, you can't opt out at all, and you still have to pay them for no service.
Correct. Yes, sir.
I'm curious about the option about the capacity. The entire city is covered by one carrier, and then say like 3% decide to opt out. How are we going to get somebody to come and pick up their trash? I mean, it doesn't make any sense economically, and their rates are probably sky high.
Yeah. That's more than likely that's the case. But again, I think we've heard from a number of people that just want that provision and they want to have that option. Like the lady I talked about, who just wants to continue with that company.
Well, I can't understand how she has the same carrier problems here.
Yeah.
If anybody, remembers in the last 10 years, there have been so many buyouts, Eagle changed with this, except eyes, they're all buying each other out. I had an interesting situation because I just recently switched. Waste Connections hit me with a 28% interest. And I called them up and they were like, well, if we more and they were increased tonnage and we have to raise our rates, they wouldn't even talk to me. They wouldn't even consider a discount. So I said, great. I said, I quit. I got a local Waste Management and they gave me a way better deal. But the catch is, Waste Management refused to do alley pickup. They said, if you have it now, fine, but no new customers get alley pickup. So that gives me a feeling that company P, who company A and company B is.
Not the other company A is.
Yeah.
And just for reference, so we did talk to a lot of other cities who currently have programs. And as an example, Golden, because we have no idea how many people might opt out. Golden is running around between 2% and 3%. So we figure that they're similar size to us, similar makeup of households, and so we think that that's going to be around the rate that we end up at.
Well, another thing is, I have a very small household. We recycle very heavily. Composting, recycling, basically, we have one very small bag of trash a week. Meanwhile, we have a 96-gallon thing of recycling that's overflowing every 2 weeks. But of course, the trash companies, they don't care. They say, you gotta pick up the trash, your garbage once a week. Because, so, we're gonna get taxed, basically, or charged by the city, regardless of household size. So, somebody's living alone with a very small amount of trash, or a household with 12 kids, they've got a ton of trash. Everybody pays the same, right?
Correct, yeah. We are looking at, once we, the nuance to this, there is an option to do like a graduated sizes. So we can do 32, 64, 96 gallons, which we'll likely consider, or just do 96 gallons across the board, which is the big one that are about just covered.
Waste Management shows those 3 sizes on the website. But when I got hold of them, like, you got no choice. You got 96 period. That's it.
Yeah, Mercy.
I'm just saying that interesting because we didn't have the code in 1932 and 96. They told you that.
You give me So it's kind of silly, because like I said, I've got a 96-gallon container with millions of bags in there. But meanwhile, I've got a massive amount of recycling. But they won't just do recycling only, they have to do that.
Before I go to this gentleman, can everybody hear, or would you like a microphone? Are you good? Sir.
What will the cost be by the city be operating that?
Yeah, so that was that $2 a month roughly. We're still going to finalize that, but it's probably going to be a little under $2 per month per household for us to administer the program. And that's for 1.5 staff persons to manage it, plus then the education materials. So we would send out, a calendar showing when your garbage pickup is, what day you have, what can you recycle, what can't you recycle, and then quarterly throughout the year, just as a reminder of different items. So it's mostly the mailer and the education costs, plus, but the majority is that staff. Yeah, Marcy.
You probably get it, it is a fact, if you opt out, you will still pay that $2.
That's correct, yeah.
And I guess my question is, if you opt out after the first year, and you're paying that $2 administrative fee, is that not going to become a tax? Because now I'm not receiving any product, any service. So with that $2, have to be the tax instead of the fee, and then one council has to, okay?
Sure, yeah, let me explain that. So it is still a fee because you are receiving a service in that we still, again, have to manage. Let's say you opt out and you're going to go with provider D. And you would still have to come in or somehow show us that you have proof of service. And so we have to document that. And then you'd still receive the educational material. So even though you might not necessarily benefit from them or need them, we cannot, divide out the addresses necessarily from getting those mailings. It's usually a bulk mailing. If we did this, basically all households get that. And so that's basically what you're receiving. It may not feel of value at $2 per month, but you would receive, that's what you're receiving for that $2.
It's all based on residential households. As everybody knows, they're building apartments everywhere. I just like to get apartments and probably keep their trash. Who's in charge of that? Is that what you go on this for?
No, so yeah, we can only mandate it for up to 7 units. So we are including single-family homes. We do have quite a few duplexes and triplexes, so they're included. So that altogether becomes 9,600 what we're calling households. Above that, then you're getting into quad places or more units, like apartment buildings. They typically have dumpsters or a different type of container that isn't going to be serviced by this type of truck. Same as commercial. So instead, what they're doing, that they're going to be picked up in a different way. We are going to make it available, though, or make people aware, multifamily homes aware that this service is available if they want to contract with the company, if we were to move forward.
Obviously, apartments and massive amount of users compared to home, you're not going to be able to force them to recycle.
Yeah, and at this point, we cannot, we do not mandate recycling. Within our code, we do not require really anything more for multifamily or commercial related to garbage, or really residential other than you must have service. Yeah, Christine?
I have to add that it's a state law, because it says cities aren't allowed to say which provider, a multifamily apartment or commercial building can have. And it can say that the commercial building or apartment has to offer recycling, has to offer garbage service, but they can't seem to have to go with a certain provider. So it's not something the city can do if they want.
Yes, sir.
Why do we have to be
Yeah, again, that was we debated that a lot, and the committee can certainly speak to that as well. But the intent is how we wanted to ensure that we try and get, at least for the proposals, what is the least cost possible, assuming that everyone's in the program that first year. We had no idea how many people might opt out, and so this was our attempt to say, okay, let's try it, and at least give us a try, see if it works for you before you would consider opting out. Anybody want to add to that?
I don't know whether I have that per se, but can you tell us, remind us again, what other cities in the Denver metro area have you been on trash? So is it Golden, Urbana,
Urbana just switched.
Commerce City,
Denver?
Denver, yeah, that's really big Denver trash.
Yeah.
But everybody, all these other metro companies They actually have used waste managers, Arvada Hills Republic,
Yeah,
Highlands Ranch,
yes.
Highlands Ranch,
Louisville, Lafayette.
Louisville, Lafayette.
Mhm.
So they're not necessarily government run, the government managed the billing part.
Mhm.
And then, these other companies come in and they just get the whole uniform contract. And the idea that we have less trucks on the street and less wear and tear on the roads, thereby some cost savings is, an intangible, addition to the city, not having their potholes and do the alleys.
Exactly. It's hard to quantify that.
It's very hard to quantify, right, tax savings in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Edgewater is and Sheridan just, I think, switched a few years ago as well, so they have uniform collection. Yes, sir.
Thank you for doing this as well. Following up on your point, did you find out from all of the cities the improvement of what the impact has been? And has it improved anything or what case studies can we look at?
Yeah, I did talk extensively with Arvada, which switched, kind of made the transition last summer. And they're a much bigger city. I think they're over 100,000. We're about 37, so we're about a third of their size. And it was difficult, they said. So it was difficult educating people. It was, they talked about it for many years. There's a lot of opposition to it because, again, those same disadvantages that we talked about, having less or more government control. And so, but they did decide to switch, and it took them about 5 to 6 months to implement. And they feel like, so now coming out the other side, the staff feels like it's been really worthwhile. That's been their opinion. They still get quite a few phone calls, especially as new people move in, people move out. They have had to increase their staff to respond to questions and manage the program. But they feel it's beneficial overall, would be I think could summarize their feelings. Sir?
What will the city do if you don't pay the amount?
Yeah, so it would show up on your utility bill, still at $2. Oh, yeah, well, essentially, just like, if you didn't pay your water bill, you would, at some point, it would go to a lien on your house. Sure. Yeah, and that's understandable.
So will they be paid yearly for the contract? Do you have any idea what you guys want to do on a contract for 5 years?
Yeah, so we asked for prices for 5, 7, and 10 years. One company gave us pricing for all three. One gave us pricing for just 7 and 10. So we're looking right now, and the way we compared the prices was just for the 7-year option. So again, if we move forward, we'll get into that nuance of the 10 was not that much cheaper. So we probably, for this initial round, just go with the 7-year.
When do you plan on putting the bids out?
Well, we already have.
Those already, we have 2 companies.
Yep.
With Waste Management, we don't do public. Waste Management, we still run off, we should have a pretty good leg up there.
They were very similar in costs. That was very, very similar. And so I think really it comes down to then these different things that we talked about. These nuances between what is the level of service that people would be willing to live with.
I'm just, gentlemen, they're in the same situation. I have Waste Connect, we still find jobs and did everything I had. So they got astronomical price increase in the world, so I came down to find out what's going on. They're not even bid.
No, same thing happened. I think if we did a 10-year contract, more would be interested. That's why we did it twice. So first it was a 5-year contract and we got just the 2. So we went through a whole month's worth of, let's try to make this more attractive. And let's try to throw all the bells and whistles everybody wants. And this is just 2 companies. And the same thing happened when we had just one person. $46 a month down to 25 this.
Yeah, I don't feel this thing was good, and I got this mail.
Yeah.
From the waste management, obviously. I don't see how they told us a bit. It's like your backyard, there's the rules.
Vince said, I don't know, November of last year, correct? Remember, that was what happened to fuel recently.
Yeah.
Exactly what it was there for.
They have to keep them open for a certain time. I have extended that through April. So that's why we're working on this timeline to bring this back to city council so that we can decide if move forward or not. But yes, that's very much a consideration.
It seems like this is taking forever. Personally, I've been living in England for 22 years. I wish they had done this a long time ago. Because this seems way more efficient. We're just really tired of the freight of garbage trucks.
Sure.
Especially since Waste Connections just recently switched to pick up on garbage from Mondays. They pick up the recycling on Wednesdays. So we've got Waste Connections on 2 days a week. We've got Republic and then Waste Management drive around. It's just like nonstop.
Yeah, I had heard that about Waste Connections changed all their pickups, and now the garbage, that was a requirement as well, that the garbage has to be picked up on the same day as the recycling. That seemed like a nuance or a minor thing at the time, and now it's like, oh, I guess that's
Speaking of daily service, obviously it's a big city. There would be different sections that would have different days.
yeah. Most likely, yeah, we required that they develop a schedule. It would probably take 5 days, but they'd have basically 5 routes, so one for Monday through Friday. And then we publish that in the map showing what your day is for your area.
What is our monthly cost gonna be in that first year?
Yeah, so right now,
Because you haven't said anything about it.
sure, it's in the survey, so it'd be, I think that's actually my next slide, yep. So the base service, so between those two companies, and again, there's a range there because we have the smaller containers that we might use up to the bigger ones. But it's roughly $25 to $29 per month. Then you add that $2 per month city administrative fee to get to that range of $27 to $31. Then with that 3% increase, if we add that on, after 7 years, you'd be paying $32 to $36 per month.
And this includes fuel costs for right now.
It does.
And Waste Connections does another thing with it. Service, and they have the other costs. Yeah, this stays the same for, now there is a cost of living adjustment, I guess, that comes into play, no?
No, but we made it that this had to account for all of that. Yes, sir.
This is about half of what I think.
Really?
Wow. I mean, we signed up with Waste Connections about a year and a half ago. And, yeah, it's jacked up and
Not just
it's
with-
still right now, it's good. And it looks way more attractive now. And you were trucks on the streets, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Except for less service and it's more expensive for some people.
Mercy.
I would address your question. Is that I saw on social media that Waste Connections, people were trying to get on it, and not taking new customers. So half of the reason because they know they think the city will be going to a one trash hauler, and they're trying to get out of the city as other companies because they're thinking this is going to go to, it's not. It's not. Right. I mean, that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? That if they're going to leave, why not raise the rate? Because they're not going to be around anyway. So I just wanted to add that.
So just to recap, again, our meeting from Tuesday, if you're interested, you'll be able to watch that online. That will be posted tomorrow. And then all the questions from tonight as well as from Tuesday night will be summarized in a document that will likely be posted next week once we get that together. And again, please follow this. And if you would like, come to the meeting on April 18th. You can speak to City Council if you would like to this. Or again, send comments ahead of time, either to myself or via the survey or on that Englewood webpage where you can actually type in comments even if you don't want to take the survey. We'll also take comments tonight.
Again, listen to you say less trucks on the street. Sounds like that would be the way it would be. How did you read this completely? Say there's 5 companies out there.
Yes.
It appears to me that there's so many cubic yards of trash we picked up in the city per month. All tandem dump trucks, compaction trucks, all about the same yardage. So it's gonna take that many trucks to pick up that much trash, no matter what name they have on the side. So it's very questionable whether they would be less trucks on the street. There's one truck now picking up every house on the block, he may be able to go 3 blocks before he has to go down and come back. So I think when you really go into that, there's not going to be that much less trucks on the street because they have so much trash to haul, and a truck can only haul so much trash.
Yeah, I think that is qualitative that we're making an assumption. But the idea is that, let's say, again, you have 5 houses being on a block being serviced by Waste Management, 10 being done by Republic, and 5 being done by Waste Connections. So each of those trucks has to come down.
That is the right way. I don't see how anybody could ever figure exactly.
Yeah. Again, we're not making any specific, like it's going to reduce X amount of trips. We can't get to that granular detail. But the assumption is that those 3 trucks would all have to drive down the same street regardless of how much they're picking up. Would that mean that if the one company that we hire has more trucks on the street because they have? Exactly, definitely, yeah. But we still think overall there would be fewer trucks. And I think that's the time. Oh, and so just one more thing to mention. So again, on April 18th, if there was a decision to move forward, then we were anticipating that it would take roughly 6 to 9 months to implement. And that's really a lot of education. So you guys are informed, you are aware of what's going on. There's still a lot of people who probably are not aware of what's going on. And so we want to make sure we take time to educate people, and then we implement either in late fall of this year or spring of next, because we don't want to roll that out when there's a lot of snow on the ground, basically. We want to do that where people can deliver the company can deliver the trucks or the containers efficiently. Yeah, Chris?
What about yard waste? Like currently my hauler that's 22 a month, if I put bundled branches or bags of yard waste out next to the trash, they take that, it doesn't cost anything extra. What's included in regard to that with these haulers?
Yeah, so everything would have to fit in the container. So you cannot place items outside of the container next to it and they will not be picked up. So the intent would be is that all of your garbage would have to fit in that 96-gallon container, or you have to hold it off to the following week. So that is a lesser service than what you're currently being provided.
Curious how picky they will be. Say I put some twigs and leaves in my container.
Well, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, as long as it's in the container, they'll take anything, or not hazardous waste, obviously. But yeah, they don't make the distinction of but it goes to the landfill, whereas some people, like with the composting, it actually gets taken to a composting facility. So.
The city council meeting. Where?
Yes, it'd be just in the same level, just through those double doors over there.
So not exactly, nobody comes in the side.
No, this would be where we actually present all this information, so all the survey results, all the comments we receive, for them to then consider making a decision to either move forward or not. They might also consider putting this on a future ballot. to say, hey, we want to hear officially from everybody, either a yes or a no, do you want to consider this? That's an option for them as well.
So they haven't written me up to mine yet?
They have not, no.
It's always there. I don't necessarily
Six.
want to- you go over there.
No. No, as a proposal, we can weigh factors other than just price. Sir, did you have another question or comment?
You know, I pay $16 a month.
That's great.
I've got waste management. I can put out a lot of bags that they will take. They'll take, I have to bundle them, but they'll take, waste or tree, parts. And I have no problem with service and stuff. So, I get alley pickup, and there's like 2 trucks that come down. There's waste management and whatever. So I can't understand how all of this truck accessibility seems to be such a problem.
And I think,
Waste management, never seen they can. I can put out as many bags as I want, I can put out as many tree limbs I want, I got pieces of furniture, everything else.
nice.
And then you're gonna tell me, I'm gonna put it all in one can.
Yep, yeah. And that's exactly, why we're talking about this, because there are some great prices, there's some great service out there, and then, there's people paying very high prices too, so it's across the board.
Tremendous. And I don't know what I did. All of it. When I built my house, I bought 2 or 3 of them, and they were reasonable. And you don't give it a
You can sign up for that.
No, I've been here 3 years.
I've been living over 40 years, I'm paying $37 a month.
Well, what you got,
Go figure.
call this guy out. 45 bucks.
Are you getting the same discount or anything? You should have.
I'm just satisfied with getting everything out.
Yeah.
That's part of the game.
Yeah, no, I understand.
As you can see, it's a hot topic.
Right, single one, and I'm gonna have to go with one kid and nothing else but 2 times a year.
Great.
Yeah, Marcy, I just wanted to say, I have this big ash tree. It's just absolutely wonderful. It's probably 60 years old. And even 20 days will not hold. So, you've been great at it. And the next day, it doesn't look like I did anything. So I think my compliment is, I love my tree. People actually take pictures of it because it's so beautiful to drive along. But it's like, it's gonna cost me a fortune. To get extra bags.
Thing I would give the tree 6 years old.
Yeah,
I learned the trick is mold it, get out of it, recycle the leaf into the ground.
it's just so that.
You gotta do it a lot.
Well, I'm not myself.
Okay.
When you're single and I feel like I'm slow, or slow, so it's pretty hard to do it on your own. I think it's a good idea to do that.
I just want to put that one for, condos, if you can get one, you're considering there's options. I just put it to all my neighbors are interested in, that would be a solution to this, the leaf problem, and we're not trying to trash.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely composting your yard waste is a great way to go.
We've been accepting our neighbors who are rescuers, rather than just, whatever.
Give us your address.
Yeah, please.
Okay.
commercial, but I'm not, it's taking forever just to fix the recycling. Try to get your compost just a whole other level.
So I'm happy to answer any other questions, keep the format open. If you want to talk to me one-on-one, I'm happy to do that. But I appreciate you coming out and sharing your opinions. And again, look for more information as we summarize the results of the survey. And please inform your neighbors too. This is, again, a hot topic and people want to know about it. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.